Hello and welcome. Welcome, everybody. We are just so excited to talk today about early vote day and about why it's so important to make sure that we're registered to vote. Take the lead. You may wonder why a women's leadership program is putting on a program about the importance of voting. I'm going to tell you what I think about it, which is that I really and truly believe that participating in civic engagement and civic life of a community, of a country, is a part of leadership. And we can't have the kind of environment that we want to enable everyone to achieve the leadership of their opportunities, of their hopes and dreams, and their work, or even their family life, if we don't participate in the civic life of the democracy. Is that's really, it's hard work. It's for all of us. So I am really excited today to be able to welcome three amazing people who are leading organizations that can provide you with all the information you need to be a really engaged citizen and make sure that you have your right to vote and participate in many different ways in the process if you are interested in doing that. I'm Gloria Feldt. I am co-founder and president of Take the Lead, and I am just beside myself to introduce you very briefly to this incredible panel. I'm going to share a few thoughts about why it's important for us to be engaged in knowing that this is early vote day and all that comes after it, because how many days, guys, do we have left till the election?
49.
49. Okay, it's we're getting into countdown zone here, and so we need to really be thinking about it and make sure that we are all set and able to cast our vote and have our vote counted. So Priestley Johnson, who is the what is your title exactly, Priestley? I'm afraid I don't even know that. I just know you're Priestley.
No worries. My name is Priestley Johnson. I am the Director of Strategic Community Partnerships here at When We All Vote.
Excellent. Wonderful. And Marta Hanson, you are?
I'm the National Partnerships Director at Power the Polls.
Fantastic. And Bryce Bennett, you are?
I'm the Project Director at Vote Early Day.
Fantastic. So you can see that we have just the people who can tell you all exactly how you can make sure that you exercise your vote and participate in democracy. I was just going to kind of start this off with a personal story and then ask you all to tell your personal stories about why you're so passionate about what you're doing and what brings you to this work. I will tell you that never in millions of years would my grandparents, who came to this country to escape oppression from countries that weren't democratic and where they didn't always have the ability to vote, it would have never occurred to them not to vote. So I basically grew up in a family where voting was like, it was like having dinner. I mean, you just did not skip it. You were brushing your teeth. This is something that you simply did because they recognized the privilege of being in a democracy. And they also instilled in me the concept that being engaged in the community is simply part of the price we pay for living in a free society, because if we don't do that, if we don't participate, we can't really complain about what's going on. So that's where I'm coming from. And a very early mentor of mine told me his definition of politics, which is that politics is the clash of uncertainty from which social realities are constructed. Now, how does that happen? It happens because people who have strong opinions actually get engaged, talk about it, get involved in what's going on. And I don't say that to be cynical. I say it to say this is why it's so important to be engaged in that conversation. So I truly believe that each one of us can make a difference. I've seen it. I've had the opportunity to see it whenever I speak. This happened to me again today. I just made a speech. Somebody will ask me, what makes me so optimistic? Why am I so optimistic? And it is always because I have seen that people working together can really make a difference. So an individual can make a difference, but people working together can make an even bigger difference. So also, as we talk about this, let's remember that civic engagement is more than voting. It's an everyday process, but voting is the baseline. Voting is the baseline. So with that, why don't we just start off, Marta, with you. Tell us about what brings you to this work. What exactly can you provide for people? What does your organization do? And why are you so passionate about it?
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Gloria. So I'll share a bit about my own personal story very briefly, and then I'll speak a bit about Power the Polls. So for me, I grew up in my family with stories of my great-great-grandfather getting kicked out of Denmark for early union organizing, my aunt getting arrested organizing with farm workers, with Dolores Huerta and others. And so, Gloria, to your comment of these like family stories of one person can make a difference, that's always been something that has been a big part was a big part of my childhood and has been a big part of my career. And really like my life's purpose and my calling. And I think having a deep-seated sense of justice and fairness, and thinking in many ways of all of the things that I have been given without deserving them, how can I work to change systems and structures so that everyone has access to lead full and vibrant lives. So that's what brings me to this work. I've spent most of my career in gender and racial justice work, but in the last few years really shifted back to politics and the democracy, because to me, everything comes back to elections. If our elections are secure, if our elected officials are representative of the people that make up this country, that everything else connects to that. So right now, I get to work for Power the Polls, which is a national nonpartisan initiative committed to the integrity of our elections by recruiting the next generation of poll workers to make sure that people who show up at every polling place to vote have people who look like them and speak their language, who can support them in casting their ballot, because we believe voting should be a positive and empowering experience for everyone. So I will pause there and surely share more in a bit.
Thank you so much. Priestley, what brings you to this work? And tell us all about what you're doing.
Well, one, thank you for having me. I am honored to be here, especially amongst my peers. We're not competitors. We're like in the same fight, and this kind of makes it such a great conversation to have today. And so I do this work because of people and wanting people to feel seen and wanting them to feel heard. And I think especially being a Black woman, being from the diaspora, my family is Jamaican, and we came here and we called this home. And so what does home really mean, and how do you participate in that? And so kind of echoing some of the themes we're already talking about, just wanting people to feel seen and making sure that their voices are heard. And so at the work at When We All Vote, our mission is to mobilize people to make sure that their voices are heard. And we take particular interest in young people and communities of color to make sure that they are heard in each and every election. And we want to make sure that more people are participating than ever. And so that I'm happy to share more once we get into it. But thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you, Priestley. Bryce.
Well, hello, folks. Thanks so much for having me. I really feel honored, just as much as everyone else has said, to be part of this panel with amazing partners and a great opportunity to talk about something that I know that we're all passionate about. I'm Bryce Bennett. I'm the project director at Vote Early Day, and I got my start like a lot of young organizers, going out in knee-deep snow and pouring rain to register people to vote. I'm originally from the great state of Montana. So it was something that we always just expected was part of the agenda when you were trying to empower people to vote, and very appropriate here on National Voter Registration Day to have those memories of it. But I just so clearly remember, even the first time that I volunteered, when we would reach out to other young people and we would help get them registered to vote, that you could see that there was a change on their face when they actually realized that politics wasn't something that had to happen to them or something that was just going to run over them. It was something that they got to be a part of and something they got to be integral within. And I think that the thing that got me involved in politics was the constant narrative that was happening at that time. And I think it's still unfortunately very true today, that young people did not care about engaging in the political process and that it wasn't something that mattered to them. And piece by piece, we've been able to chip away at that. So obviously, after years of organizing with young people and helping empower people to register to vote and have their voice heard, when I saw this opportunity to bring that message and that work to a national level at Vote Early Day, I was very, very eager to have the opportunity to lead this important program, the Civic holiday. And just as a bit of background about Vote Early Day, we are a nonpartisan holiday that was created in 2020 by our friends at MTV and a number of other amazing national partners as a day of action and celebration. It's a movement of media companies, businesses, nonprofits, election administrators, creatives. We go on and on and on, all working together to make sure that Americans have the tools to vote early. And we focus the holiday around voting early because so often we have seen that when people wait until election day, they run into barriers like long lines, hectic schedules, voter disinformation, constantly changing election laws. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And we want to make sure that in this democracy, everyone's voice is heard and everyone's vote is counted. So by bringing together people within the civic space, outside of it, partners from diverse walks of life, building a celebration that is fun and engaging, that invites people into our democracy, we've had tremendous amount of success in encouraging millions of Americans to cast their ballots early and bringing together thousands of partners from every state across the nation. So our holiday is coming up very, very soon, and we're certainly eager to celebrate with all of you.
Well, to piggyback onto that, we've just laid out all of the positives, a lot of the positives, and sort of this very positive, optimistic view about voting and participating in the democracy. But we also know that it's especially important this year because there have been many changes in voting laws, because there may be some impediments that people will find that they have not found before. What should people be thinking about? How should people be thinking about that? I mean, what should they be doing right now to make sure that they are registered? First of all, that they are registered. Secondly, that they know where they're supposed to vote. Thirdly, there's been redistricting since the last election in many states, and they may be voting for completely different people when you talk about local races. So what are some of the impediments to voting that you've observed, and what can people do to make sure that their vote gets counted? Who wants to start with that?
I, as a voter registration org, I can jump in.
You'd be it.
At When We All Vote, we are helping register people to vote. And so I'm going to drop a link into the chat. It is the best link so that you can register people to vote, check your own voter registration status, and check others. And that link is weall.vote/take the lead. And that is the best link to use so that you can check your voter registration status. The reality is in 2020, we had historic voter turnout. We were able to crush numbers we've never been able to see when it comes to voter registration. We had all-time high increase voter registration for young people, just in general, for voter turnout in general, and then also for our communities of color. They turned out in record numbers. So what happened after that was that 500 voter suppression laws were introduced into your state legislatures. I mean, laws like in Arizona, making it a requirement for voter ID, which disproportionately affects older folk who never really had that as a barrier before. So they would have to go and see that. Then we have in Florida, we have the over $1 million a year election police department that is created to promote disinformation and promote this idea that voters are just promoting disinformation. And then we also have in Georgia, where there is you can't give food or water in line when people are registering to vote. I mean, it is small things that add up to make people feel discouraged to participate in the election. So our response to that is saying, don't get discouraged, get aware and get educated and continue to do the work. It's continue to be involved, continue to get involved. Your vote is not being suppressed. Your job is to keep going and to keep and to help other people. That means when you're helping someone register to vote, that means staying with them until they complete all of the forms. That means, hey, texting them to say, hey, election day is coming up, or did you know in our state we can vote early? Let's make sure we turn out early. Because we already voted early, how do we volunteer to be a poll worker that day? So our job is to say, yes, voter registration is the first cog of interest. Yes, there are barriers in the way, but it's up to people like us on this call. It's up to people in our communities to continue to do the work and to still get involved despite any blockers that you guys may have.
Well, I think what you were saying was really interesting about in telling people not to be discouraged by the fact that there may be some folks who are trying to keep them from being able to vote. I don't know if it's me, it just makes me more determined. To me, it's like, you think you're going to stop me from voting? No way. I'm going to show you. And I hope that many people will feel that way, because it's just, I'm going to tell you, like yesterday, I actually was at a event for a number of state legislators. And I discovered what I didn't know was that my state legislative district has changed. So there are so many little things like that can go on that can maybe not discourage you from voting, but may cause you not to be educated when you go to vote, or may cause you to decide you don't know enough to cast your vote. So Bryce, what do you advise people? How do you advise people because everybody's busy, everybody's super busy, everybody's got jobs, they've got families, they've got things to worry about. How do you advise them to get over hurdles like that?
Yeah, not to toot our own horn here, but we really do believe in voting early, not just because, it provides a little bit of convenience for people, but it does help ensure that people are not stopped by the many barriers that land on people's desk when they wait until election day. I think that there's going to be millions of Americans, because of the different laws that have been passed in over 20 states across the nation, that will show up at a polling location with an ID that is no longer going to be valid. They're going to show up at a polling location that is no longer a polling location. And I think that when you vote early, you can run into those obstacles and find a way around it. You have the time and the wherewithal to ensure that doesn't stop you from sharing your voice and everyone has a chance to cast their ballot. But if you wait until election day, it may be the thing that stops you from having your voice heard. So the other thing that Priestley really leaned into hard that I think is so important is the importance of education around this. It's not just on our organizations, it's not just on the groups that are always involved in the civic space to be sharing this information. It's truly on all of us, on businesses, on nonprofits, on athletes, on so many people out there, to make sure that this information gets out there, because we owe it to each other to make sure that things like basic information about the IDs that you need, or where you can vote, or how you go about it, or what's on the ballot, are not just held by those of us who are watching the news every day. They have to ensure that everyone, no matter who you are, or where you come from, or how you vote, has that same information.
So, Marta, would you talk a little bit about power of the polls and getting more people to be poll workers? I'm just thinking about the last time that I cast a vote in person. It's been a while, because I usually early vote. I almost always early vote and vote by mail. But it seems like first of all, there weren't that many people who came in to vote. Secondly, so it would have been, there wasn't that much excitement going on. And secondly, the poll workers that were there tended to be pretty much, that you could tell they'd been there for a while. And so I'm very excited to hear that you're talking about getting younger people and, people that you wouldn't ordinarily see necessarily. Talk about how do you find people to work at the polls, and what would they be doing if they were working at the polls? What would they even be doing? I think most people don't even know what would they be doing if they were working at the polls?
Absolutely. All of these are great questions. And I think the one thing that I will say to just reference back what Priestley and Bryce were both talking about earlier and to your previous question is, for as long as America has, as the United States has had voting, we have had people trying to prevent certain communities, especially communities of color, from voting. And in many ways, voter suppression is as old as any of our institutions, and just in that same way, so are these initiatives to really counter that in a joyful and connective and collective way. So that is what we all really get to be a part of. We're seeing a new current iteration of that, and also, you know, election administrators and all of these different advocacy organizations are accustomed to and being nimble with changing our tactics and trying to mobilize as many folks as possible. There are many more folks who want our elections to run smoothly and want everyone to be able to have access to vote than there are people who don't. So, and I'm sure that's everyone on this call. So in terms of poll working, this is a great way if you do have a bit of extra capacity. The best way of feeling overwhelmed or stuck is to find where you have agency, right? And find where you can plug in. So a moment ago, I dropped in the chat I had echoed the Priestley's link from earlier, and then also the Power the Polls link, which is where you can sign up to be a poll worker. So basically, poll workers are the ones who run polling places. So if you have ever voted in person, it's the folks who greet you when you walk in. They check your name off a list. They either give you your ballot or direct you to the voting booth. They hand you the I voted sticker at the end of the experience. They manage the lines. And they're also the folks who know how to troubleshoot, or you will be taught how to troubleshoot if a voting machine needs some additional help, or help troubleshoot if someone isn't registered or is in the wrong place or has a question. Some of the needs that we're hearing from election administrators all across the country is we actually need more folks who are tech savvy, who know their way around a tablet. And also the second other big need that we're hearing is bilingual poll workers. So people who are able to speak English and another language. Spanish is the most common, but we're also hearing needs for tons and tons of other languages, from Hopi to Navajo to Tagalog and Hmong and Russian and Ukrainian, and like all of these different languages. So if you're interested in learning more, I will also drop my email in the chat. If you are connected with a community that has particular language skills, we would love for you to do that. So again, the link is in the chat. Sign up to be the one who, again, has the opportunity to show up at your local schoolhouse, community center, place of worship with your neighbors to really make sure that all of those get out the vote efforts are worthy, because people will actually have a place to go on election day or on early voting days.
And Marta,
like
just to add to that, these are paid positions, isn't
Yes.
that right?
Thank you. That is actually,
my sister, this is like she loves this. She's like, oh, I get paid to take time off of work to volunteer to help people. And it's a fun time and a great time. So I love
Amen. Exactly. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm thinking about picnics and, like really having kind of old fashioned get-togethers, community-wide get-togethers to make voting fun again.
We've got groups that, as Priestley said, that really bring folks bringing their friends, so that it's like you and all of your friends, or people from different community organizations will all show up together and be the ones who are working the polls again, to just really make it that positive experience we all want it to be.
That is really cool. So most people, or many people, get a lot of the information that they get from the companies that they work for, or at least there's an opportunity, I guess, for companies to provide information. Bryce, do you have some examples of companies that do support voting and just information? They aren't telling people how to vote, but they're encouraging people how to vote. And since we spend so much of our time at work, that just makes big logical sense to me. What's going on in that arena?
There's so many amazing things that businesses are doing to encourage not only their employees, but their customers and their supporters to be part of this important work and be part of this election. The thing that we talk about a lot at Vote Early Day is meeting people where they are. And I think that there's a lot of folks who are probably the folks who are on this call who are going to get give or take 1 million reminders to go vote between now and election day. But there's a lot of folks out there who are probably going to get little to no reminders because of that's just the way that they consume the news. That's the way that they live their lives. That's the connections they have. And to ensure that we're able to connect with everybody exactly where they are, we really have to reach outside of the traditional civic space to make sure that we can get people the information they need to cast their ballots. And that is a really important place where, some of these bigger corporations and businesses are able to come into the fold. Vote Early Day really prides itself on being able to bring together a lot of those partners. And I can give you some great examples, like, some of our partners at Patagonia and Lush Cosmetics are having events in their stores. So on Vote Early Day, you'll be able to go into those locations, make a plan to vote, find out where you can vote early, get some cool stickers and buttons in the process. But there's other groups like Snapchat who will be releasing a series of different filters that people will be able to use. So it's not just a fun way for them to say, look at what I'm doing, but they can share it with their friends as well to give them that additional reminder. And the list goes on and on and on between sports teams and corporations and nonprofit organizations. I mean, so many people that are doing the important work of spreading this word to let everyone that's involved with them and their work share this vital information. And, of course, the other thing is that there are a lot of really important movements happening around encouraging people or corporations providing time off for their employees to actually cast a ballot. There's a great organization called, Time Off or Time to Vote, and they're doing a really great effort to ensure that, businesses are reaching out to other peers within the business community to encourage each other to make this a policy that is standard across corporations. And, certainly if you are a business owner, if you are involved in the management level, this is a big thing that you can do to make sure that the people involved in your community that you obviously cherish so much have a chance to share their voice.
That is really great. I'm really encouraged to hear that. We do know that sometimes people do encounter problems with the registration or with the voting process. Priestley, could you address what people should do if they run into some kind of problem? If they find out there's something, if their registration gets challenged, or if they have a problem when they're trying to vote, can you advise people or give them some suggestions?
That is a really great question, because we want to make sure that people leave here equipped with everything they need to start to take action. So if you are registering anyone to vote and you go to the link, weall.vote/take-the-lead, and scroll all the way to the bottom, there is a section that says voter resources, and it goes directly to the election protection hotline. That is 1-866-OUR-VOTE. I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste that into the chat. Should you have any issues, let me see, everyone. If you have any issues with your ability to vote, to cast your vote, if you feel like something fishy is going on at a polling location, that is the best resource for you. You can call that number or you can text that number, and it is equipped with 24/7 election protection experts. And those people they'll pick up the phone, they'll talk to you, they'll walk you through exactly what you need to know. Should you be like, hey, can I bring my parrot with me to cast my vote? Look, we don't want you to be an expert on all of the laws, but guess what? We know where the experts are. They'll know if you can bring your parrot or your lizard, whatever you need with you to cast your vote, and you just don't know. Guess what? They have all the answers to your questions. And if you're like, hey, this is a little weird, this is suspicious, is this legal? You can call that number too. And they are legally trained election experts, and they are also underneath the umbrella of Civic Nation. I'm wearing this shirt. When We All Vote is a branch of Civic Nation, and it's an organization called We the Action. And basically, it's lawyers that volunteer their time to support organizations, nonprofits, and individuals that need additional legal support. And so they've donated their time to be able to help us out. So we should definitely use that resource should you have any questions.
That is wonderful to know, really. There are many states that do have, in addition to voting for candidates, that also have ballot initiatives of various different kinds. I vote in Arizona, where there are always at least a half a dozen or more ballot initiatives every single time. And sometimes they can be very confusing. Very often you get these big, thick pamphlets that tell you about them, but who has time to read those? They're hard to interpret. What do you recommend, or can you recommend some reliable sources of information for things like the ballot initiatives, where it's not a candidate necessarily, but it may be an issue that is of great importance to all of us, to voters? Who wants to take that one?
I think ballot initiatives are a great way for states to basically advocate for just progress in their community, but it's also a way. Ballot initiatives really take an uptick during midterm elections, and especially when certain things are going on in your state, and maybe it's a highway bill that's going to be built in the middle of a community, or maybe it's a, hey, do you want this, taking a poll of how the people feel about a certain issue, or where they want to land in that, and which can directly influence the laws that are in the state. Paying attention to those ballot initiatives are really essential, and they actually have an uptick during midterm election years when there's not a lot of turnout. So during those presidential elections that are happening every 4 years, you're not going to see a ton of them. You're going to see a few, but not a ton. But during these years, when they're counting on you not to turn out, they're counting on you not to read or put all that time in. They're counting on you not to care about who the Secretary of State is in your district, or what's going on in your council members. I really think that it's really important to pay attention. If I can, Gloria, do you mind if I share a little bit more about what's at stake this election? Because I feel like this is super important.
Sure, go right ahead.
I think that this kind of always basically grounds me in the fact that this is a very important year. So this year, I'm not sure if you guys know this, voters are going to elect all 435 seats in the House of Representatives. Mm-hmm. All of the seats are up for election this year, and 35 of the 100 US Senate seats are also up for election. This is a year when a lot of people don't really pay attention. This is why it's really important for us to pay attention. We also know that 36 governors, 30 attorney generals, 27 secretary of states, and 6,166 legislators are also going to be up for election in our state governments. Thousands of mayors, city council members, and school boards are also up for election. So especially when everyone, sometimes in our culture, we don't think midterm elections are that important. This is a year when a lot of decisions get made, and the fabric of our country is at stake. It is our democracy. It is our ability to continue this thing. I think we take for granted our democracy and the fact that we have the ability to opt in to what our government does and who represents us. A lot of places do not have that privilege. And with the 500 laws that are being introduced for voter suppression and are passing in a lot of states, it's really, really important for us to don't take for granted our opportunity in democracy. It can erode, and it can go away. And we don't want to live in a society like that. We want to choose that society where we can have our voices heard. So as we think about the importance of this midterm election year, why you need to send that link to one more person, why you need to volunteer to be a poll worker, why you need to make sure people in your community are voting early. Make sure you really genuinely think about, what does a society look like without this opportunity? This is a privilege, and we all should be paying a little bit more attention. Just a little bit more can really go a long way.
Great sermon, Priestley. Great sermon. I think everybody needs to hear that, and without question. And I, you know, as you were talking, I was thinking about. I know that I read that in the ballot initiative that was recently on the primary election in Kansas, that many people, because they were paying attention to the ballot initiative, they voted on that, but they didn't necessarily vote on the rest of the ballot, on the, you know, on the candidates who are running for the different offices. So I would love to hear some comments about the importance of voting up and down the ballot, and not ignoring some of the opportunities that you have to make a difference with your vote. I know, I mean, you know, I'll speak for myself and just say, you know, like sometimes when there are like 100 judges on the ballot, that for me is a hard one, and I have to do some research. But how can we encourage people to pay attention to the whole ballot, I guess is my question. Any big tips that any of you have?
I think, just to jump in really quick, one thing that really helped in 2020 was that we did a lot of vote by mail. And so a lot of people were able to get their ballot at home, and were able to take the time and to look at it and to say, oh my gosh, who are these people? And we're able to Google. But also another opportunity, if voting at home is not your thing, and you're like, oh, I kind of just want to go in, get it done, you are not being timed when it comes to voting. And you can bring your phone in there, and you can just start Googling, and you can take your time and get it done. I know you'll see the long line, you'll feel a little guilty, but guess what? Do your due diligence. And also you can go to your Secretary of State's website and see who is up there. So you can go in informed already in advance. I'm like a last minute person myself, so I'm going to just give all the ways, because I understand we all have different styles, but it is definitely important for you to do the research in advance.
Thank you so much for that. There's a lot of discussion right now about the youth vote, and speculation about what's going to happen with the youth vote, because of the fact that it can turn an election one way or the other. What exactly are we talking about when we talk about the youth vote, and what are you thinking, and what are your thoughts about getting younger people involved in voting? We know the percentages of actual voting goes up the older people get, probably because maybe it may be a function of time, and B, it may be a function of simply feeling more of a stake in what's going on. What are you seeing, and what are things that are happening that are helping to get the youth vote out?
Well, I can jump in and start from the poll working angle, which is more of youth civic engagement more broadly. But one of the exciting things about poll working is, in some states, you can actually be as young as 16 years old to be a poll worker. So we've got 16 and 17-year-olds who want to be engaged, want to give back to their communities, want to have a say and a voice, but can't vote yet because they're not yet 18. So for any folks on the call who are perhaps under 18 but still want to be involved, or have some 16 or 17-year-olds in your life, that is one really great way to for younger folks, for the next generation, to get involved and step up.
That is a really great idea, because it's sort of like talking politics at the dinner table.
Totally, yeah.
It's
and
kind of the same, like the sort of the same thing. You just it starts to be part of the air and the water.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And getting paid for it, right?
Yeah,
It's a win-win.
Right. Bryce, Priestley, do you all have any particular youth vote programs that are going on?
Yeah, I just wanted to hop in really quickly to say that the exciting piece from everything we've seen is that young people are already engaging in this election. We've been looking at numbers from the primaries about how young people are participating. We've been looking at voter registration numbers to see how young people are engaging. And in every metric across the board, I mean, I don't know if this is true of every single state, but the trend is by and large, more and more young people stepping up and having their voice heard. This is not an election that young people are going to sit out. It is very clear already that young people are invested, they know what's on the line, and they want to make sure that their voice is heard along with all the other generations out there. So we have every reason to believe from everything that has come before us that we're going to see a lot higher turnout amongst young people in 2022 than we did during the last midterm election. And I just to loop back to the last question about, all the different things on people's ballots, I think that it is a really exciting opportunity for people that participate in the civic holidays, things like National Voter Registration Day, Vote Early Day down the line, National Voter Education Week, which is coming up very soon, to provide some of that education in a fun and exciting and engaging way. Because I think that, as somebody who in a previous life came from being elected to one of those lower tier offices that people didn't always pay a whole lot of attention to, I can tell you that the more local it is, the more impact it's going to have on your day-to-day life. People look at the US Senate, they look at the presidency and think that that's going to be the thing that affects so much of their life. But the reality is that your state legislature, your city council, your local prosecutors, I mean, all those folks are going to have a much bigger say in all the things that you experience in a day-to-day moment. So if you are, and I'm going to toss a link in the chat here about how people can get involved with Vote Early Day, because it is a great opportunity to have those educational moments, to bring people together for a party at the polls or some sort of panel or whatever it may be. The nice part about Vote Early Day is it's very open source and people can celebrate in a way that's meaningful for you. But I know that it is one of those questions that people have that often keeps them from casting a ballot, is they weren't sure about some of the races. And by having those fun and engaging peer-to-peer opportunities to educate your friends and neighbors, it goes a long way to making sure that people feel more and more comfortable about casting their ballot.
Thank you. I want to have one more question about youth, and then I can see it's going to be time for us to wrap up here pretty quickly. There's been so much good content and so much good information that you've shared, and I really want to thank you for that. What are the issues that you're finding are, in fact, getting younger people interested in voting? What are there particular issues, or is it more of a general, voting is important? Or are there particular issues that are motivating them?
Yes, I can jump in here. Young people care about the earth. They care about their environment. They care about their future. And they care about where they live. They care about the air they breathe. They care about the ocean. If you have a conversation, they know what's going on with the ocean. They know fossil fuels are dying, are killing us. Like, there's all of this going on. They are educated. And I think when we talk about young people, I think we have to give a lot of credit. They are educated. The information is at their fingertips and they want to be involved. In 2016, we had youth voter turnout around 36%. In 2020, it jumped all the way up to 50%. This is the highest increase ever seen across a age demographic in our history. And this is going to increase. I mean, they want to be involved. They want us to pass them the mic, and it's up to us to empower them and to get out of the way. I mean, an example of this just happened at a staff retreat. One of our younger staffers was like, I was 8 years old when Barack Obama was elected into office, and everyone went, oh my God, because of our own mortality being questioned. But our job is to say, that really impacted you at such a young age. And we know what has impacted us and, that path, but we're like, oh, really? You were paying attention that young? When I was 8 years old, I was trying to play with blocks and jacks and stuff. So like, it just never even crossed my mind that at such a young age, because of the age of technology, they want to be involved. Our job is to give them more tasks to do, pass the mic and get out of their way, and also not to discredit them. I think a big thing is to say, not even say, hey, are you even interested? You don't need your own youth campaign. There's a bunch of organizations doing young things for young people. And there's a lot of young people speaking to young people about getting involved. What can we do to help them? Do we need to fund them? Do we need to give them resources? What do they need? Because a lot of the times we're like, well, we need to talk to young people because their vote is important. I agree. I totally agree. But what we need to do is allow them to talk to each other and allow them to occupy their own lane and cultivate their own voice. The earth is always the number one topic when it comes to talking to them.
That's very interesting. You've given me goosebumps, because that's just, I mean, that truly can be a game changer. I think it's just, to get young people involved, and once involved, we tend to stay involved. So that is really good news. I want to end with a question that, and I want to give Marta props for suggesting this as a question, because I think it's a great way to wrap up this conversation, which is, what brings you hope? What inspires you? When we're talking about voting and this incredible, tremendous work that each one of you is doing. And I'm just really, I am really moved and pleased that an organization, that nonprofit organizations like Take the Lead, which remain nonpartisan and non-electoral, but nevertheless can help people to get the information that they need to be able to participate in the democracy and to see voting as part of their leadership. But I know it's hard work. It's hard work that you all do. So what brings you hope? What inspires you? So I'm going to toss it to you first, Marta, since you were the one who brought up that great question.
Perfect. Well, thanks for asking, Gloria. I think for me, what brings me hope is the power of the collective and seeing how many, like the vast diversity of organizations and people who are working tirelessly and every day to ensure that our democracy continues to function as it should. By way of example, at Power the Polls, we're partnering with Gen Z organizations and the AARP. We're partnering with veterans organizations and also Unidos and APIA Vote. We're partnering with a group called Trek the Vote, which is about mobilizing Star Trek fans for election security. Like, truly, and everybody in between, right? And being able to see and all of the corporate partners that Bryce mentioned earlier. So really thinking about this, seeing the vast array of people who are energized and mobilized, and really see democracy as something that is theirs, and that they can do something about. So that's what energizes me.
Fantastic. What brings you hope and inspires you, Bryce?
Gosh, I feel like I just got to piggyback a little bit on what Marta was saying. I do get so inspired by the fact that, it's not just a handful of people in elected office that care about, people casting their ballots, not just a few, political scientists at a university just studying. I mean, there's so many folks out there that completely disconnected with the kind of core mission of what they would be seen to be doing, whether that's a corporation, whether that's a library, whether that's an athlete, an influencer, I mean, who really never in their life would have to say anything about their democracy. There's nobody saying you absolutely need to engage in this work, but through their own volition are stepping forward because they see the value in ensuring that everyone has their voice heard and their vote counted. So I have the great fortune of having the opportunity to work with these folks and talk with them about how they can get engaged. And not everybody has a really clear sense at the beginning about how they're going to do it, but they show up at the meeting with arms wide open because they understand that it's such a valuable role that needs to be filled, and that it is not just one person's role to fill, but it is all of our work to do. So that is definitely giving me hope every single day.
That is amazing. Priestley, I'm going to give you the last word on that. What inspires you and gives you hope?
What inspires me are the volunteers that do it on their own time. Just piggybacking off of what Bryce said, the organizations that don't do voter registration as their bread and butter, the people that go out of their way to say, if not me, then who is going to do this? And also the people that were a little bit have experienced an election that and said, oh my gosh, I could have done better, and I will never let that happen again. And so if you ever had that feeling, this is your game to get into, and it's time to really take action. This midterm year is really important, and it's so important that we have you guys in the game with us. So thank you.
Well, I will just say that you all have inspired me and given me lots of hope. And I am so glad that we had this opportunity to have this conversation. Thank you all for putting your information in the chat. We will be happy. We Take the Lead. We're putting out information every day to give people the links that they can go to. But everybody who signed up for this webinar, we will be sending out the chat that includes all of these links, and we will continue to put them out to the world. And we are deeply honored to have the opportunity to partner with all of you. And just thank you so much for sharing all this great information today. And I know it's going to inspire many people to check their voter registration, make sure they're registered to vote if they're not already registered to vote, and to perhaps really pay attention to what's going on with the issues and the candidates, so that when they do vote, they will feel like they're informed about it, and maybe they'll even become poll workers. Who knows? Who knows? Is there anything else that any of you would like to share with people to engage them in what you're doing? I'll give you one more round here if you want to just add anything to encourage people to sign up with your organization. Anything to add? You covered it all?
Just a shameless plug. It's National Voter Registration Day. Check your voter registration status.
And I have the same thought as Priestley. I just dropped the link in the chat for National Voter Registration Day's website.
All right. All right. Thank you all so much for being here. Really appreciate it. Everybody, let's get to work.